Welcome to Scepter Publishers Podcast. Today we have a special bonus episode with Father John Henry Hansen on his new book, The Fire and the Silence, Prayer, Thought, and the Battle for Inner Stillness. Welcome, Father John Henry.
Thank you, Katie. Great to be with you today.
Yeah. So I'm excited about this new book from yours. We have several through Scepter that you've published, but in one sentence, how would you summarize the message of Fire and Silence?
How to pray without undue distress.
Oh, okay. I like this.
It's hard to encapsulate it into one sentence, but if I had to say that, I would say what really motivated me to write the book was to counter the distress that people experience when they try to pray and have distracting thoughts of various types.
Sure.
So to facilitate prayer and to engender confidence in those who pray, that a distracting thought or recurrent thoughts need not deter you from praying and need not tire you out. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
And was there a particular moment or a struggle or maybe a conversation you had with someone that kind of inspired this book? Like what went into you deciding to write this particular one?
Well, I would say it's ongoing interactions I have with people as a priest. That is, people who have started to pray and who are far along the line in praying sometimes hit an obstacle, brick wall, where they feel like they can't go further or they don't know quite what to do when the memories come up that they don't want, or other thoughts and anxiety, any number of things that can come and kind of overshadow our prayer life. And so based on multiple interactions I've had with people over the years, I thought there's a lot we don't understand, a lot that people don't understand about their own mind and will, and what you can hope for in prayer. Like, is it really possible to have a distraction-free prayer? And the answer is no, unless God gives you a very, very special grace, which he does sometimes. But nevertheless, because we're fallen, because of original sin, we don't have like an airtight kind of control over our thought stream. And to understand that is to go a long way in grappling with unwanted thoughts.
Absolutely. I think it's so good to remember that, because I think so many people think their prayer is not worthwhile because they struggle with these distractions that happen, or they're doing it wrong, right? Or they're doing it poorly. And you're saying the exact opposite, right? That it's not that you're doing it poorly. It's just you're human, and this is how it goes.
Normally, I mean, it is possible to pray badly. Yes.
Sure. Well, yes.
It is possible to do that. But, for somebody who's sincere and they're wanting to be in union with Christ, and they're wanting all that he promises, there can be that kind of interference with our thought life that makes them think that they are doing it badly, when in fact it's just a growth process. And often, as you'll find in the book, distractions can tell us a lot about where we need healing, where we need maybe forgiveness. It gives us kind of intel about ourselves that can be very valuable.
Absolutely. So the title I'm curious about, The Fire and the Silence. What is the role of these two words when it comes to the life of prayer, and kind of why those two words?
Yeah, well, both of them have to do with our interior life, but under different aspects. Fire means the desire that we have for God, the desire we have for holiness, the sincere desire we have to be in union with God. And that needs to be cultivated or stoked, as it were, to keep the flame burning. It's an image used by the mystics, St. Teresa and St. John of the Cross use it quite a bit to describe what our inner state should be like. Whereas the silence part is really a consequence of having ordered desires. That is, when our focus and our heart's desire is on God, they are where they should be. And if our other desires are encroaching on that, then we have to order them by growing in virtue. But once that process has begun and once we've made progress, then those other desires quiet down, and then we can have substantially peaceful, tranquil prayer. Now, there will be exceptions to that, of course, but nevertheless, that's how they both go together. It's really the ordering of our desires and how that brings inner quiet, inner peace, and inner calm.
I'm curious your thoughts on how do we foster exterior silence to allow for kind of that inner silence when I feel like so much of our life today is just noise,
Yeah.
right? And you know, it's just you go everywhere and there's music playing in every store and there, you know, like how do we start doing that when it seems so foreign and so many people are almost afraid of it?
They are. And just to follow up on your point,
Yeah.
music and voices everywhere. We used to have, I live in Orange County. At our gas stations, there are video screens that play commercials,
Yes.
even at the
Yeah.
pump, right? So it's
Mhm.
crazy. But a lot of that has to do with our own choices. Like how much noise am I inviting in simply by irresponsible use of social media,
Sure.
of screens, of
Mhm.
the iPhone. So part of it has to do with, well, what are we choosing already?
Mhm.
And once we've drawn good boundaries in our lives with respect to social media and internet use and all of that, then we can carry an inner silence with us into the
Mhm.
world because God is more powerful than even the noise of the world, right?
Sure.
But in order to be able to be attentive to his voice, we have to cultivate that silence within the bounds of our own home, right?
Mhm.
We have to have, quiet places where we can really learn to discern what it feels like, what it sounds like to hear God's
Mhm.
voice
Sure.
and to really be attentive to it so that we can bring that with us out into the world and
Mhm.
not let the world dictate whether I'm going to be at peace or not, whether I'm going to pray or not, because it shouldn't. It shouldn't have that
Mhm.
power. And
Sure.
God's grace is certainly more powerful than
Mhm.
any of those distracting things. Yeah.
Sure. So besides kind of distraction in our prayer or this lack of silence, what are other things that you see that people are running into today when they struggle with prayer, like certain patterns or certain things that they encounter?
Well, I would say I don't want to be repetitive, but the
Sure.
main thing people are grappling with is internet and the iPhone, especially the
Yeah.
the habit that people get into to just checking,
Mhm.
all the time messages, and what happens is we don't have any boundaries anymore.
Mhm.
That is there is no time in my day where it's exclusively for God.
Mhm.
You can interrupt me at any point,
Right.
and that's okay. And it shouldn't be okay unless you're like a first responder, right?
Sure.
Where you have to be on the phone. But if you're
Mhm.
not a first responder, what's going on there? Like, people are just like they have their phones in the confessional, they have them and in church, they have them everywhere that they go.
Yes.
And it makes you wonder, like, is that a sustainable way of life, especially if you're trying to cultivate prayer? So that's really the main obstacle. And so people are beginning to recognize that now that we've had the iPhone for I don't know how long, 20 years or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And people are saying, this is destroying our ability to think and to be present to the person in front of us, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's kind of a big deal. Like interpersonal communication is being thwarted. And what prayer is interpersonal communication with God, right? And so if I'm always checking or always looking at something, I can't even be present to the Lord.
Mhm.
It really requires a lot of self discipline and saying, I'm going to be very intentional about how I use media, phone, and all of
Mhm.
that, and be willing to say to people, I'm not available right now,
Yeah.
right? I'm not available.
Which, for a lot of people almost feels like a sin to be like, I'm not available,
Yeah,
or I mean, not entirely, but like it feels like you must be available, especially
right.
like for certain
That's
businesses.
That's
Mhm.
the that's cultural expectation
Right.
is that. And if you don't answer my text within,
Right.
10 seconds,
Yeah.
what's
Where
wrong?
are you?
Right, exactly. And so that
Mhm.
kind of a cultural expectation needs to be corrected. And
Yeah.
you can't correct it, you know, in a global way, but at least
Right.
personally, I can say, these are my boundaries.
Mhm.
These are my boundaries. And when I'm at mass or at holy hour,
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer the phone.
That's great. In the book, you describe prayer as a battleground of the mind. And why do you think prayer so often experiences this struggle rather than something peaceful for a lot of people? That kind of battleground.
Well, it goes back again to our disordered
Right.
desires. They militate against our good desires
Mhm.
to be present to God, to be at peace, and to
Mhm.
pray. And so there can be a kind of antagonism between what I feel pulled toward by
Mhm.
my lower desires and what I want in my higher desires, right?
Mhm.
So the battle is really a moral battle,
Mm.
because I said earlier that our distractions and our disordered desires give us intelligence about what
Yeah.
we're really drawn to. And
Mhm.
so the battle can be fought not by just getting more intense in my mind and by concentrating harder, but by bringing those disorders before God for healing.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really the reason why we have a battle at all is because of original sin, and our
Mm.
mind is weakened, our will is weakened. We are, even when we're doing the holiest things, our
Mhm.
mind can go to the
Sure.
most gross places. It can go to the
Mhm.
most inappropriate things, and we think, "How did that happen?" Well,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be shocked by that. That's what original sin does, and our own sins can contribute to
Mhm.
that, right? So what we really need to do is to recognize that's a part of the equipment I'm working with, and God can heal that. So when I feel a pull in a bad direction, I say, "Oh Lord, look where I'm going right now." And I'm being pulled because there's something about that I want, and I know that that's bad. So heal me of that,
Mm.
show me the good that I really desire that's underneath that, right? Something like that.
Sure. So it's not just a matter of acknowledging these distractions that come in and ignoring them or pushing them off. You're saying almost like bring them into your prayer to talk to God about before you go back to what you were initially praying about or whatever.
I would say so, and I think it depends on what the distraction is. I mean, it
Mm.
can be something, if it's something relatively trivial, like
Sure.
in the environment in which you're praying, like
Yeah.
somebody keeps, I don't know, coughing or something like that.
Yeah.
You're not going to pray over that as an
Right.
isn't a big deal. So, but we're looking more at kind of the deeper desires, the deeper pull that we have towards something that we know is not helpful for us, but it's kind of constant or recurrent. And
Mhm.
so what we want to do is say, okay, Lord, this is a problem area. It's not just there's a fly buzzing around or there's somebody's sneezing or
Sure.
whatever. It's something deeper, and it
Mhm.
affects my ability to be present to you.
Mhm.
Okay. That's the line of discernment that we have to draw. Is it affecting my relationship with God
Mm.
in a significant way? And
Mhm.
so that's when I want to say, Lord, let me bring this to you because I don't want there to be any kind of a barrier here, right?
Sure.
So
How do we draw the line between I'm bad at prayer and I just get distracted in my prayer? How do we really see the difference in that?
that's a good question. What does it mean to be bad at prayer?
Yeah.
Well, it means, on one level, it means to be somehow insincere. I think
Mm.
most people who pray are sincere, and so I don't think that's so much the problem. But
Mm.
what can make our prayer bad is when we don't take the necessary measures in
Mhm.
order to ensure its quality. So
Mm.
what I mean by that is if we are going to pray in say a part of our home, then we want to make sure that that area of prayer is conducive to prayer. That is, there aren't
Mm.
like screens on
Sure.
or something like that,
Mhm.
or it's as quiet as we can possibly make it. It's just like any other important thing we do in life. We want to make sure the circumstances for it are appropriate to
Mhm.
ensure that the goal we have can be reached, right?
Mhm.
It's like that. We do that with diet, we do that with
Sure.
exercise, we do it with even like watching a movie. You put the
Mhm.
movie on, you don't have another screen going on over here, right? You
Right.
don't have multiple things going on because you
Mhm.
want to focus. So I would say being bad at prayer means not taking reasonable measures to make
Mm.
sure that focus can be maintained and
Mhm.
interpersonal dialogue with the Lord can happen.
Mhm. That's great. In the book, you draw from both kind of desert fathers and also modern psychology.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm curious how these two perspectives kind of complement each other in our understanding of the mind and prayer and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a very sophisticated question
Sure.
because there's a lot going on there. The Desert Fathers, so we're talking about the ancient monks in
Mhm.
Egypt of like the fourth and fifth centuries. They grappled in a kind of a dramatic way with their thoughts, and they maintain what you entertain determines how you pray, how you desire, how you act. So they would trace everything back to your thoughts and what you do with them. And sometimes these bad thoughts are exacerbated by demonic spirits as well. So that can make things a lot worse, right?
Sure.
So, and they would be able to make a discernment between what's coming from you, what's coming from a demon, and what's coming
Mhm.
from God. So, going into modern psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy is something
Mhm.
that is very widely used,
Mhm.
widespread, and it goes along very well with Catholic anthropology and the
Sure.
understanding of the mind. And that is that the basic simple truth there is that the way we think about something decides how we feel about it. Right? So in other words, the emotion follows how I'm perceiving, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm, say, afraid of certain types of people or something, whenever I see them, I'm going to have an emotional reaction because of
Mhm.
the way that I perceive them. So when we're thinking about things, we want to make sure that our thoughts are as accurate and truthful as they can be. And sometimes what hijacks the mind in our prayer life is thinking about something in a way that's not true or
Mm.
true enough or isn't accurate. And a modern psychologist, Aaron Beck, who developed this idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, he said
Mhm.
this is called reality testing.
Mm.
When you find that you have a thought that provokes a very strong emotional reaction, pause, get some distance between you and the thought, and ask, is that real?
Mm.
Or how real is it?
Mhm.
Is my perception on target or is it distorted?
Mhm.
And that's where he introduces the idea of cognitive distortion, where my thinking about something is kind of bent out of shape. Like
Mhm.
I'm interpreting a situation to be dangerous when it
Mhm.
really isn't.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, if you're afraid of air travel,
Mm.
you look at a plane and you say, that's dangerous.
Mhm.
Well, it might feel that way,
Sure.
but statistically, is it so? No,
Mhm.
it's not. It's very safe, but that's how it makes me feel. And so overcoming the feeling by having more accurate thoughts.
Mhm.
That's where we're kind of merging the ancient tradition of the Desert Fathers and the thought life, and also what modern psychology has to offer.
Interesting. I'm curious with your formation, and then you also have a master's in
I
psychology,
do, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
What insights from your background in these fields has most influenced your own prayer life that's also helped you kind of pray well and kind of and have that deep thought life that we talked about?
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with where do my thoughts habitually go when
Mm.
I sit down for quiet prayer. Now, normally when we're spending some time in meditation, it takes a few minutes to kind of
Sure.
uh,
Center.
center to put some separation between
Mhm.
oneself and the activities of the day. That's
Sure.
very normal. But once that's more or less in place, where do my thoughts spontaneously go? And I know one Carmelite author mentions they normally go in one of two places: things that I'm afraid of and things that I desire.
Mm.
So kind of aversions
Mhm.
and things that I want.
Mhm.
Okay, that's very helpful to know that. And so when we go to prayer and our distractions go off in those directions, those are the areas where prayer and prayerfully bringing those things to God can really be a source of healing and self-understanding. So I find that psychological component in knowing why I'm going in this direction and not
Mm.
that one, or why I'm recoiling from this or that, knowing what's behind that can help me to really pray in a more authentic
Mhm.
way, right? I'm not presenting somebody for God as something other than
Sure.
I really am.
Mm.
And sometimes those distractions or straying thoughts can really humble me and
Mhm.
make me say, Lord, look at this. Look at the mess that I'm in. Look at what
Mhm.
I've done, or look at what I don't want to do.
Mhm.
And that's just a very beautiful, vulnerable moment, right?
What would you say is the role of kind of memory, so imagination, of our attention when we're looking at prayer? Can it help? Does it hinder? How do we use these well?
Yeah, it can do both,
Mm.
helping and hindering.
Sure.
The imagination is certainly used in meditation, like when we're
Mhm.
praying the rosary or the Stations of the Cross or
Yeah.
reflecting on Scripture. There's often an imaginary component,
Sure.
rightfully so. But it can also work against us in that the imagination, the memories can be all over the place and can intrude instead of helping prayer. The purification of the memory is something that St. John of the Cross, the great mystic, talks about, where as memories emerge, as they are brought before our eyes, they have to be discerned before God. Like, what is this? Why is this occurring to me? What is it? Why does it trouble me? Or why does it allure me? Or what is what's going on there? And sometimes what that will reveal is that maybe we need to forgive somebody, maybe we need to forgive self and accept God's mercy in a deeper way. So a way to handle difficult memories, traumatic ones especially, is to be able to know what to do with them when they come up, because traumatic memories by their very nature recur. Right, that's what they do. Right,
Yeah.
so those are kind of exceptional things that it's not every memory is a traumatic one, but those especially need to be brought to the Lord. But every other memory that's troubling in some way, those certainly need to be presented to the Lord for understanding and healing. Yeah.
For those who are listening now and thinking, okay, I don't have a lot of interior stillness and silence, what would be some kind of simple practices or habits they could start implementing now that would help them reach that and help, therefore, then improve their prayer life?
Yeah. So this is, again, going back to the main struggle, right? Like,
Right.
okay, my prayer life is intruded upon by inner chaos. And it's like, I don't know where to begin. There's a kind of a media detox that we need to go through,
Yeah. Yeah.
as we are on social media as we speak. We have to be very intentional about what we put into our mind and what we imbibe, right? To the extent to which we can avoid adding to the chaos, we should. But also, one other thing I have to be honest about this, that some people don't have inner peace because they haven't been to confession in a long time. So that's a very important thing. So if somebody is very troubled on the inside, I would ask, what is your sacramental practice like? Are you going to confession regularly? Going to mass regularly, and so on. So if those things are in place, then I might dig a little bit deeper and ask what's your prayer life like, to help calm those stormy seas on the inside. You've asked a question which is very very complex, because people have that they have inner chaos for different reasons, right? And sometimes it is very complex trauma or other things
Sure.
which require special handling. And in other cases, it can be a phobia. It can be simply be that I take in too much media. I overstimulate myself to the point where if I don't have something to stimulate me, I'm bored. Okay, so one of the big obstacles actually that people face is they've so overstimulated their brain that sitting still even for like 5 minutes
Yeah.
is really a chore, and they just get bored and depressed. But the solution that people go for is simply to put
Yeah.
more of the stimulating things in, and those again have the same pattern of failure. So it's really separating from a lot of that stuff and creating places and times of silence, and being willing to endure a little bit of restlessness that goes along with that.
Yeah, I think especially if you don't have a lot of silence in your life, it's going to be really uncomfortable at first when you set up these kind of boundaries and try and start moving
Yeah,
in that
very,
direction.
very
And
uncomfortable.
people are like, oh, it should be easy. And you're like, no, like this is so hard for us since we have surrounded ourselves with so much noise and distractions and
Sure.
notifications. And yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when I give silent retreats, normally they don't last more than 2 days at a time.
Mm.
But for people who aren't accustomed to silence, it can be very unnerving. And I say that's helpful for you to know that. It's helpful for
Right.
you to know what's going on inside of you when you can't sit still. Like, you really, really, really pray over that, because we're not built to be constantly stimulated, right?
Right.
We are meant to behold God and to be connected with Him in prayer. So think about what it is that's disturbing you when you can't even be silent for a day or two, right?
I want to pivot just slightly because as we're talking, it's making me think of a lot of young moms I know who would love 15 minutes of silence in their life, but they have children crawling all over them and that kind of a thing. What would you say to them in terms of how they can live their prayer life, now as they, wrangle toddlers?
I always have moms of small children on my mind when I think about this very issue of prayer. Well, sometimes they can manage, like, say, 15 minutes a day if they have somebody to help take care of the kids, like the husband or an older child, just for 15 minutes. Okay. But in the absence of that, or even in the presence of that, they have to pray on their feet. Really, they have to pray through the day with a deep enough interior life that they can have, as Saint Jose Maria says, a kind of a constant dialogue with the Lord all day long. The goal, really the goal of those privileged moments of the day, like 15 minutes when it's exclusively prayer, the goal is that should translate into my interior life 24 hours a day, right? There shouldn't be a time when I close off communication with God. So a mother of small children, as children crying and throwing up and endangering themselves in the house, all these kinds of things where you're like alarmed all the time. The mother needs to learn how to be mindful of God throughout, and to be bringing these things and bringing her children to God interiorly and praying over things and asking the Lord, what do you want me to do next? How should I handle this? And that's really a way of building an interior strength. And going back to one of your earlier questions about, when we go into the world, there's music playing and, video screens at the gas pump and everything. Well, if we've already built an interior life, then we can carry through the day. And again, it can be stronger than even all of those distracting things. And so reading Saint Jose Maria, who has, bullet point meditations, reading those over the course of the day, you don't need more than 10 seconds sometimes to just pull it out, chew on it, and then carry it with you in a meditative way, even while you're cleaning up after children.
I love it. That's great. It's a great response. Okay, last question for you. What do you hope readers experience while reading this book, not just intellectually, but also in their prayer life? Like, what do you hope they're going to take away?
Well, I hope what they'll take away is encouragement. First, greater understanding of what their mind is working against, what their heart is working against, what they have to expect from their interior life, and not to be discouraged by distracting moments, distracting thoughts, but to recognize those are part and parcel of our prayer life. To learn that those give us good information, that we shouldn't indulge them. That's not the answer either. But to understand that they're giving us useful information. That's part of what the Catechism of the Catholic Church mentions that in its section on prayer, which anybody who prays should read that. It's so deep. But to take away the encouragement that my prayer life can continue to grow and flourish with these distractions, with these different memories and so forth, that I can work through and grow through and attain union with God through it all.
I love it. Thank you so much, Father John Henry. I really appreciate this conversation.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Katie.
And you can find Father John Henry Hansen's book, The Fire and the Silence, Prayer, Thought, and the Battle for Inner Stillness on Scepter's website.